This is Steve Zeltzer with Pacifica. And on March the 11th is the 12th anniversary of the Fukushima disaster. And people don't believe it, but actually it's still ongoing in Fukushima. And we're going to talk in this interview about the fact that the melted rods still have not been removed from the broken reactors. And the government is planning to dump 1,300,000 tons of tritium reactive water into Pacific. And joining us today is Chizu Hamada. She's with No Nukes Action Committee, which is based in the Bay Area, and Carol Hisasue, who is with Mothers for Peace in Diablo Canyon. So welcome to our show.
Thank you, Steve.
First of all, the 12th anniversary, I know that both of you have been working many, many years on this issue. Did you ever think that 12 years later, we'd be in a situation that we are today?
It's very hard to think about. We are so upset, and then the government more like acting like it's not a big deal. We will contain this accident, and even before the invite the Olympic, Abe Prime Minister, former Prime Minister said that the accident is contained. But after 12 years, still they cannot start the retrieve those melted core, and then on they are delayed. So actually, much worse than the beginning.
Exactly. That's exactly how I feel.
thought a little more, going, progress, and then taking care of the victims, plenty of compensation, but it's the opposite. It is terrible. And people are sure that 12 years later, forgetting. That is very fear, because nothing to forget. It is still the catastrophe. Those are still here, still suffering, really. So yeah, more than I thought. It's worse now.
And Carol?
I totally agree with Chizu. In one way, like right after the accident, there was a little bit of hope that despite the enormity of the catastrophe, it was going to shift Japan's way of thinking about energy, and that they would really start to pursue true renewables and get the nuclear spike out of their veins. But it actually turned that into something worse. Like Chizu-san was saying, the country has forgotten. A lot of the people that were angry about it initially have gone complacent, and it's like, well, it didn't really affect my life as much, so oh well, that kind of thing. And like Chizu-san was saying, they haven't been able to retrieve the melted core, the melted fuel. They have an increasing amount of radiated water that has nowhere to go. Some activists in Japan are claiming that, well, they still have room for more contaminated water, so they didn't need to dump it into the ocean right now. But eventually, they're going to have to do something about it. And instead of investigating ways to take for example, the tritium out of the water and really decontaminate it before they, dump it into the ocean, they're not doing that. They're just going for the easy way out. And then now with the war in the Ukraine, Japan is using that as an excuse to ramp up more nuclear power plants. The ones that were, shut down after the accident, and there was a lot of local opposition, and they were able to kind of keep things shut down for a long time. In fact, I think many of the plants are still shut down, but they're using that excuse. Oh, we need energy autonomy. And for them, nuclear is not an autonomous energy source. I mean, first off, where is the uranium coming from? They're not digging it up in Japan. It's coming from somewhere else. And so they're still tied to, external forces. The better thing to have done is just go no to nukes, no to fossil fuels, and really go for renewables. but they didn't. And I just don't understand why. And you know what really maddens me, infuriates me, is that the same thing is happening all over the world. Right after the accident, there was a big sort of anti-nuclear movement and just this atmosphere that, you know, everyone's done with it. And people in the United States and Europe, you know, Germany especially, they were going, okay, that's it, we're done. And they were starting to shut down more and more and more nuclear plants. But now, you know, the nuclear industry has been spending so much money and has you know, spread so much propaganda. They are so insidious that they've been working really hard with the media, but they have the power and they have the money to do so. And now everybody is just joining in with, oh, it's going to save us from climate change. It's going to save us from global warming. And it's not.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
me, it's more like, you know, it's again the nuclear renaissance has come back, I feel like. The last month, February, the Japanese government cabinet approved the policy that to make new nuclear power plant, and also the allowed to age the existence of nuclear plant to prolong over the 60 years life. You know, the current is limited 6 years, they extend. So after the accident, more than, I mean, majority people in Japan oppose for the nuclear power plant, and then everybody decommissioning, we hoped, and then Germany did that way, and then we hope Japan that way. But now it's like a renaissance come back, and everybody forget about Fukushima's catastrophe. It is very terrible.
And there's, of course, been a growth of thyroid cancer, which
Yeah,
the government does not want to talk about.
that's
The
right.
government's funded medical universities don't really want to discuss it and be honest about what's going on. And also all this contaminated waste that still exists in bags throughout Fukushima with no place to go. And the government said, well, let's handle it collectively. And they will spread out these bags of radioactive waste. I mean, can you believe it? You know, let's spread out the bags of radioactive waste throughout Japan. So everybody is responsible for taking care of this.
Yeah, the government really putting so much tax money to erase this Fukushima accident, try to let people forget so much, you know, propaganda. But, you know, people are forgetting, but so many things, so many problems are still mounting up, right? And then the one of the health, the cancer, already over 300 children got the cancers, and over 200 kids had already surgery, right? And then the 2 years ago, after 10 years later, only 6 young people sued TEPCO, right? Because it's caused their thyroid is their meltdown. And then they want to make sure that responsibility the TEPCO has, and then compensation. But this number, like 300 people got the thyroid cancer, could be the class action, but it's only 6 people sued, right? Even after 10 years later, they said that those people said they couldn't tell to anybody except in the family, because if tell to people, they are more like accuse those victim that you shouldn't really accuse the government or TEPCO or authorities, right? And they are putting their reconstruction effort, putting their legs, so they couldn't tell for 10 years to anybody, but 6 people sued. It's a significant, I think, lawsuit, but should be class action. But the Japan, so oppressed society, like don't tell to anybody. They
And,
don't
and,
want-
and, and Carol, I mean, you know, the fear that people have, even the victims who get cancer, or people that from Fukushima. I mean, there's been a history of discrimination of people from Fukushima, long even before the catastrophe. But it seems like the government and the corporations use that as a vehicle to silence people and to say that there's no problem, everybody just be happy.
Yeah, and you know, Japanese society has always had that. They value unity and conformity, and you know, they don't want even the nail that sticks up gets, you know, hammered down. Of course, in Japan, it just gets smashed down. But you know, and they use that. It's really disingenuous of the whole industry and the government, and because they know what they're doing, and they know that, you know, this is the way to keep them down.
And the Trump administration, along with Obama, were in favor of nuclear power, keeping the nuclear plants open. Former Prime Minister Abe, who was a supporter of the Moonies in Japan, he was assassinated. Their ideology was that they should open up more nuclear plants and also militarize. And what is happening now with the militarization in Japan? Because it seems that this whole Ukraine war is actually being used to justify an expansion of militarization in Japan and the expansion of nuclear plants and nuclear power and even maybe nuclear weapons in Japan. Is that a danger?
I think there is. Yeah, there's a definite danger.
The secrecy law and the many laws are just passed so easily. Even some people are against it, but then those laws are controlling easily and then militarize so much, and then even they increase the budget, right, for the military. So Japan definitely going towards the militarism.
Yeah, I think they have been doing that from, you know, a few decades back, but because of, you know, China's growing powers, conflicts, you know, within their own Asian region. But there's also this anti-Chinese movement.
Xenophobia.
Yeah, coming from the US too. And so the United States is also pushing Japan to militarize, and of course Japan's going, yeah, we should, you know, we're right there next to North Korea, we're right there next to China, we need it. And you know, and so they're buying into it completely. I think people like, well, the LDP, you know, the ruling administrations in Japan have always been pro-military, and they have been you know, what scares me is that they are trying to bring back, you know, that imperialistic Japan, I think.
Yeah.
And of course, the Japanese government, the Liberal Democratic Party, has always felt that they wanted to be like an aircraft carrier for the United States. As Prime Minister Nakasone said, Japan is an aircraft carrier for the United States, and they're expanding bases in Okinawa. The people of Okinawa do not want military bases on a small island. The effect on the children, the effect on the island environmentally. But the United States also controls the airspace in Japan. So they're flying all over Tokyo. They have a base at Mount Fuji for military training. I mean, it seems like the US government, even though the war is longer than 70 years over, still has a major presence, US jets. I mean, it seems like the whole country is basically a colony of a US military in that regard.
Oh, I definitely agree with you. You know, and the problem is, like, too many Japanese don't care. I think, you know, they buy into the propaganda that, oh yeah, we need the US military, and we need a stronger Japanese military. You know, look what's going on in China, look what's happening in North Korea, you know, oh, Russia's right there too. You know, and they're just buying into all of that talk.
Yeah, those like you know, mentality, the mass media, you know, all controlling. Government and mass media, all industry put the hands together and putting so much money for that and controlling our you know, mind.
And the billions of dollars many billions of dollars that the Japanese government has used to supposedly decontaminate Fukushima could have gone to solar energy, could have gone to wind, could have gone to all kinds of alternative energy. And they did not do that in any large degree. So, I mean, Japan has a lot of sunshine that could actually be used for you know, energy with energy without fossil fuels. So this new situation in Japan on the 12th anniversary of Fukushima, it seems like it's going in the opposite direction, away from learning the lessons of Fukushima. I know that the Japanese government, the Abe government, said they decontaminated Fukushima, and he told that to the Olympic Committee, that it is all taken care of, even though the melted nuclear rods hadn't even been removed, and they have to be watered down to keep them cool. I mean, it seems like, and they also have the position, I think, that you can overcome radiation, which is another, kind of crazy idea that the Japanese government, the LDP, is putting forward. So what do you see as far as organizing against another Fukushima, because the likelihood is there'll be another major earthquake in Japan, and that means the real possibility of another meltdown in Japan, which could destroy the whole country.
Yeah, we like to really emphasize people that this Fukushima meltdown is still ongoing, a catastrophe, and that people should not forget about Fukushima. That's why we are still have to keep our voice out and stand for the March 11th still.
And on March the 11th, there's going to be a rally at the Japanese Consulate. It's a Saturday at 275 Battery in San Francisco, to remind people about the danger of nuclear power and also the danger of militarization. And we also have the situation in Diablo Canyon, where you live, Carol, the fact that the Newsom administration and the Democrats and Republicans in California passed a bill to keep that plant open, and warning that we were going to face a meltdown here and we're not going to have enough energy. So they argued that California was running out of energy and that this was an emergency situation. It sounds like another propaganda scam on the people of California.
It really is a propaganda scam, and I'm so disappointed that Newsom has bought into it. People say, oh, he's getting money from PG&E, but insiders are saying that PG&E, they don't really care one way or the other, that they could shut it. They already signed the agreement to shut it down. If the governor says keep it open, they'll go, yeah, we'll keep it open. We get more money from taxpayers and ratepayers, and so great. I just don't understand, because I think it's the nuclear industry that has been so vocal about, oh, this is going to save us from climate change and fossil fuels, that they didn't realize that, we already have enough renewables to get by. That, with a little bit of, conservation, wise consumption, efficiency, all those things were already there. And we don't need Diablo. California is selling its power to other states. And I think, what is it, like 2 or 3 years ago, when we had like a really hot summer day and there was a blackout in some areas, that's because PG&E was selling their power to other states. If they didn't, we already had enough power here.
And this deregulation and privatization, you have a private company, power company, PG&E, which is corrupt and which controls the Public Utility Commission, the CPUC, and that whole passage of that bill, like late at night, people did not even have a copy of the bill. I mean, it was another sham kind of bill passed in the late of night without people of California even knowing what was going on.
And then the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, is just giving them like, oh yeah, go ahead. We're going to give you an exemption to keep operating even after your license is over. And by saying that, what it really means is that they're not going to inspect the state of the reactors. Unit 1 is very embrittled. There have been welding problems. There have been leaks. The 2 units have been offline for, I don't know, more than half the time, half of the year, I think, in 2021, and I think a lot of the time in 2022. So it just makes no sense at all to keep Diablo running, and yet people have just been brainwashed into thinking that we need it. And it's very distressing. The young people too, have really bought into all that propaganda.
Well,
really
and then you have the Biden administration saying we should have small nuclear reactors spread out all over, and that's going to be a better way of protecting energy. What do you do with the nuclear waste already that we have? I mean, what's the situation of the nuclear waste?
Never be green, never be green. As Carol-san said before, from mining uranium, right, and transporting, and then for the process to make the one to be used to the nuclear power plant, those processes are lots of green gas emit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right?
There's a lot of carbon emissions in the whole process.
Small one, what's good about? It's still the same thing, uranium digging, and then no place to go the waste. So
yeah, and those small nuclear reactors, I think, are even worse, because like Steve said, they'll be everywhere and they produce a lot of waste and, and plutonium, and just it's unbelievable that people are getting behind, this ridiculous technology.
And then I think dumping the water, government had announced 2 years ago, that is totally insulting to the Fukushima's victims and the people in the world. Totally insulting it. This is really shameful for the Japanese government to do. They have to really find the alternative way, keep the water on the land another way, or till they can find a method how to take tritium or how to take more radioactive materials. They should not dump the water, but they are making the tunnel under the water, and they are release the place that the people cannot see. It's so deceptive.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's even more important to have actions to educate people against this information blockade that really is preventing people from knowing what's going on. Most people are unaware that Fukushima still has not been cleaned up 12 years after. It still has to water down the rods. I mean, this is from a government said that it was decontaminated. And it was so decontaminated, they have to dump 1.3 million tons of water in the Pacific Ocean, increasing tritium in the whole Pacific Ocean for all the people of the Pacific Rim. So I think that the action that is going to happen on the 11th is important. And also in California, there seems to be very little pressure on the politicians to speak out against the dumping of this water. I don't know of any congressperson in California who said no, they should not dump the water, even though it will come to California. So I think there's work to do to make this an issue so people understand it and demand that if they do not dump it, and also they do not restart more nuclear plants, because we know, as we've said before, Japan is on the fire rim,
the rim of fire, yes.
Ring of fire, and the earthquakes that are happening all over the world, the earthquake that is coming in Japan could be bigger and could lead to another meltdown or even a number of meltdowns. So it's a nightmare scenario. I know Kurosawa did a film about it because at that time they were saying, don't worry, nuclear power plants are going to be okay. And of course, Ronald Reagan said, safe nuclear power, atoms for peace. And the United States pushed for building atomic nuclear plants, and they wanted to build many nuclear plants along the coast of California. And that was only stopped by mass action of people in California. Otherwise, you'd have 20 or 30 nuclear plants in California. So it was stopped by the action of people. So I want to thank both of you for joining us, and I hope that we can get more education out about the dangers of the nuclear power plants restarting, about the danger of the dumping of radioactive water, about the danger of keeping Diablo Canyon open for the people of California. And even in San Onofre, which was closed, they're putting them in canisters, the nuclear wads, which are dangerous. So they have no place to go. So the idea of building more nuclear plants is really insane.
Insane.
So thank you for joining us. And No Nukes Action, we'll be having an action on March 11th at 1 p.m. at the Consulate, 275 Battery Street. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. No nukes.
No nukes.